I need to get something off my chest because I'm still processing everything that happened, and to be honest, I can't stop shaking. I'm Willow, 27 years old, and what was supposed to be just another typical Friday night out turned into the most insane night of my life. The night ended with me in the ER and my boyfriend of 2 years, Nate, completely ghosting me. The craziest part is, somehow, everyone is acting like I'm the villain here when I was just trying to move forward with my career. It all started when my girls and I decided to check out this new club downtown. Amber kept saying that we needed to network since the place attracts people from the industry. I was totally on board with that because, unlike my boyfriend Nate, I actually care about advancing my career. God, Nate is so stuck. He's been working at the same dead-end job for the past 3 years and gets all defensive whenever I suggest he should aim higher. Meanwhile, I'm hustling every single day, trying to make the right connections that could help get us out of our crappy apartment. We'd been at the club for maybe an hour when we started hearing whispers. A famous rapper, I won't name drop, but trust me, everyone knows who he is, walked in with his entourage and had a VIP section roped off. Amber nearly spilled her drink on me because she was so excited, and even Kenzie, who usually acts too cool for celebrity culture, couldn't stop staring. I casually suggested we dance closer to his section to get the vibe going. Poor Nate, as usual, was standing there, looking completely uncomfortable like he always does in social situations where he's not the center of attention. He has the social skills of a houseplant. I swear, he was checking his watch every 5 minutes, as if he had somewhere else to be. Meanwhile, the girls and I started dancing, and yeah, maybe we were being a little extra. But that's how you get noticed in this industry. You think successful people just sit in corners nursing one drink all night? Then, this guy in a tight black shirt, clearly security, came over to us. My heart literally stopped. He leaned in close to speak over the music and told us the rapper wanted us to join their table. I was in shock. He then looked at Nate and the other guys we were with and straight up said, "Ladies only." Honestly, it felt amazing to be singled out like that. It was validation that I wasn't wasting my time like Nate always implies with his little judgmental looks. I thought Nate would make a scene, he usually does, especially when things don't go his way. But instead, he just stood there with this sad, pathetic look on his face. I told him I just wanted to get a selfie for my profile, maybe hand out a few business cards, networking, right? He said, "I'm cool with it," in that tone that means he was absolutely not cool with it but didn't have the guts to say what he really felt. That's Nate's problem, no spine, no drive, no vision. The VIP section was everything you'd imagine. Bottle service, incredible leather couches, people who actually matter in the world. I was texting Nate updates like, "Just talking to people, might be a while," but honestly, I was barely thinking about him. For once, I was around people with real ambition, not someone who thinks getting a 3% raise at his joke of a job is something to celebrate. When they invited us to an after-party, Amber and Kenzie were all in immediately. I hesitated for a second, thinking about how Nate would sulk for days, but then this woman, who introduced herself as the rapper's brand manager, started talking about influencer collaborations. Do you know what kind of doors that could open for me? What was I supposed to do, run back to Nate so we could go home and watch whatever lame show he's obsessed with this month? I texted him that we were going to another venue for a networking opportunity. He immediately responded with a guilt trip about wanting to go home, and I almost gave in like I usually do. But then I looked around at where I was, who I was with, and thought, why am I always catering to his comfort zone? When does my career get to come first? So, I told him I'd text him updates and that he should just go home without me. The girls were calling me over to the exit where a line of black SUVs was waiting, and I felt this surge of excitement. Maybe this was the night everything would change for me. Little did I know, I was right, just not in the way I had hoped. The SUVs we climbed into were nicer than anything Nate could ever afford. Real leather seats, champagne already poured, and a vibe that made my heart race. I snapped a quick picture for my story without showing too much so Nate wouldn't freak out. Honestly, I just wanted to enjoy this for once without feeling guilty. The driver took us to a hotel downtown, one of those posh places where rooms cost more per night than our monthly rent. I sent Nate another text just to keep him updated, just networking with some industry people, might be late. He replied right away, sending me a whiny message about how worried he was. Classic Nate, always trying to make me feel guilty for working toward my goals. Inside the suite, it was everything I had imagined, massive floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city, and people who actually mattered in the entertainment world mingling everywhere. I recognized a few faces from magazines and social media, and it made me feel like I was finally in the right place. Jay, the rapper's friend who was also part of his inner circle, started talking to me about my personal brand. He actually got what I'd been trying to build while Nate just calls it showing off online. Jay asked for my handle and followed me right there, instant 20K followers. How could I not see that as a career move? I sent Nate a few glamour shots of the view, careful not to show too much of the people around me. Making connections. So many opportunities, I wrote. He responded with more texts, asking when I'd be home. God, he's suffocating sometimes. I switched my phone to silent and shoved it in my purse. For once, I wanted to enjoy being around successful people without his negativity dragging me down. The alcohol was flowing, premium stuff I couldn't even pronounce, not like the cheap beer Nate brings home. Jay kept refilling my glass, saying things like, "You've got the look we're searching for in our next campaign." My heartbeat quickened every time he mentioned collaboration opportunities. This was exactly what I'd been hustling for, while Nate told me to be realistic about my goals. Around midnight, I remembered I should check my phone. Nate had sent about 7 texts, each more pathetic than the last. "Are you okay? Please let me know you're safe. Who are you with right now?" I rolled my eyes and sent back a quick "stop worrying." Networking with female influencers too. Big opportunities, complete with a businesswoman emoji. That should keep him quiet for now. Honestly, it felt good having him worry about me for once instead of the other way around. Do you know how exhausting it is, dating someone who needs constant reassurance that they're enough? Meanwhile, here was Jay, actually seeing my potential right away. I caught him watching me from across the room several times. And unlike Nate's nervous puppy dog stares, Jay's gaze made me feel powerful, desired. "Your boyfriend cool with you being out tonight?" Jay asked suddenly, appearing beside me on the couch. I gave him my practiced laugh, the one I use when clients ask personal questions. "He's supportive of my career," I lied smoothly. "He understands networking is part of the industry." In reality, Nate had once accused me of acting different around successful men, like it's my fault he can't hold an intelligent conversation about anything beyond his boring job. Jay nodded, like he'd heard this 1,000 times. Supportive from a distance, right? That's smart. His hand brushed mine as he took my glass for a refill. Most guys can't handle seeing their girls shine. Fragile egos and all that. It was like he could read my mind. And for a second, I wondered if I had been talking about Nate out loud without realizing it. But no, Jay just understood the dynamic because he'd seen it before. Successful men recognize other successful people. I noticed Amber across the room, giving me that wide-eyed, "What's happening?" look. I excused myself to use the restroom, and of course, she followed me. "Girl, are you serious right now?" she shouted once we were alone. "That's Jay Kingston. He produces for everyone." She gripped my arm. "But be careful, Kenzie says they're all recording everything on their phones." I rolled my eyes. "For what? I'm not doing anything wrong." But I checked my makeup anyway, reapplying my lipstick. "Nate's blowing up my phone like I'm cheating or something." Amber gave me that look, the one she started giving me after I told her about Nate's depression episode when I went to Miami for a conference. "Just remember what happened with Ryan," she said quietly. "That was different," I snapped. Ryan was a mistake from before Nate. One I had confided in Amber about during a drunk girls' night. I'm not that person anymore. This is professional. When we returned, the vibe had shifted. The music was lower, the lights dimmer, and people had broken into smaller groups. Jay waved me over to a sectioned-off area where the rapper and 3 other guys were lounging. My heart raced. This was it, my moment to make real connections. This is the marketing genius I was telling you about, Jay said, his hand resting casually on my lower back as he introduced me. The rapper barely looked up from his phone, but nodded. Still, being acknowledged by someone of his status sent electricity through me. I glanced at my phone, 1:30 a.m. and 5 more messages from Nate. I turned it face down. He was probably in bed, doing that passive-aggressive sighing thing he does when I'm out late. Meanwhile, I was in a room most people would kill to access, talking to people who could change my entire career trajectory. So, what exactly do you do? Asked another guy from their crew. Unlike Jay's smooth approach, his gaze was more direct. Digital marketing and brand development, I answered confidently, launching into my rehearsed pitch about engagement metrics and audience building. But really, I didn't have a clue. I lied. Jay handed me another drink, something pink and strong. As the conversation flowed, they were actually listening to my ideas, not cutting me off or looking bored like Nate does. When Jay suggested moving to a quieter space to discuss potential collaborations, it seemed perfectly reasonable. Professional, even. Just tell the girls you're in a meeting, he said when I mentioned letting my friends know. They'll understand. I texted Amber, talking business with Jay's team. Don't wait up if you guys leave. Then, feeling a twinge of something, not guilt, just awareness, I sent Nate a final message, still networking, might crash at Amber's since it's getting late. Don't wait up. Jay led me down a hallway to another suite. I remember thinking this could be the night that launched everything I'd been working toward. How Nate would finally see that my social climbing, as he called it, wasn't just vanity but strategy. How maybe now he'd understand why I pushed him to aim higher too. If only I'd known what collaboration really meant to them. The second suite was smaller but even more luxurious, dark mood lighting, another bar setup, and a bedroom visible through partially open double doors. My marketing brain immediately registered the designer furniture, the carefully curated artwork. It screamed wealth, and it was all so different from my life with Nate. I felt this surge of power in being here, of being chosen, of being part of something bigger than myself. But that feeling was fleeting, replaced by an unease that I couldn't quite shake. Marcus, the other guy from earlier, appeared and closed the door behind us. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, I was there to talk business, right? That was my story. That's what I told myself. But Jay's tone shifted, and with it, the entire vibe of the night. He said, "So Willow," patting the space beside him on the couch, "let's talk about what you bring to the table." Looking back, should have recognized the shift. The professional pretense was thinning, but after 4 drinks and the intoxicating feeling of being in this world, of being part of the conversation, I wasn't thinking clearly. Or maybe I was, just not about Nate. I've got a growing following, I started, pulling up my profile on my phone, but before I could say much, Jay took the phone from my hand and scrolled through it briefly before setting it on the coffee table face down. Impressive, he said, but his focus was somewhere else. What we're really interested in, though, is your personal brand development. That's when I felt the first real shift. The conversation I thought was about my career, about collaborations, suddenly wasn't. It was like the professional mask had slipped, and in its place was something much more predatory. Marcus laughed, pouring amber liquid into 3 glasses. Personal brand, that's good, he said, his tone amused. You're hot, right? That's your strategy? Before I could process my reaction, Jay smoothly cut in. What my associate means is that physical presentation is part of brand identity. Something you clearly understand. His hand landed on my knee, and that's when I froze. I didn't stop him. Not because I was too drunk or scared, though I would later tell myself that was the reason. No, I didn't stop him because part of me, just a small part, wanted to cross that line. To do something that would shock Nate if he ever found out. To feel desired by someone successful when Nate's idea of romance was takeout and streaming shows in our underwear. I was caught in the fantasy I had built up all night, the one where success was just one door away, and I would finally be recognized for all my ambition. But now that fantasy was crumbling before my eyes. The reality of what I was being asked to do felt darker than anything I had anticipated. Jay leaned in closer, his voice low and businesslike, but I could hear the undercurrent of something else in his words. The question is, how far are you willing to go to make the right connections? At that moment, I realized that the line between career ambition and exploitation had blurred. But instead of leaving, I heard myself laugh. A practiced sound, one I use when clients make inappropriate comments. But I still need the account. Depends on the connection, I said, taking a large sip of my drink, trying to keep my composure. I wasn't stupid. I knew exactly what was happening. But the alternative was going back to Nate, admitting he was right. Crawling back to our mediocre life where I was always the ambitious one, and he was content to sit at rock bottom. Let's see if we vibe first, Jay said, his mouth suddenly close to my ear. His hand slid higher on my thigh, and I didn't stop him. Not because I was too drunk or scared, though that's what I'd tell later. I didn't stop him because part of me wanted to cross this line, to feel desired in a way I never did with Nate. What happened next is both blurry and sharply clear in my memory. Kisses that tasted like expensive liquor. Hands more confident than Nate's ever were. The bedroom with its ridiculous king-sized bed. And then Marcus joining us. Something I had never even considered before. They talked about what they wanted to do, as if I wasn't there, or as if my agreement was assumed. Ever done backdoor? Marcus asked, his voice clinical despite the crude question. I shook my head, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and defiance. This was so far from my quiet life with Nate, from his careful, almost timid lovemaking. There was something darkly thrilling about being desired this way, wanted for nothing but my body by men who could have anyone. She's too tight for both, Jay commented to Marcus, as if they were discussing a technical problem. Well, go one at a time, Marcus replied, reaching for something in the nightstand. Part of me wanted to leave. To run back to safe, predictable Nate. But another part of me, the part tired of always being the responsible one, of always compromising my dreams, whispered, why not? Nate would never know. And even if he somehow found out, wasn't this just proving what I'd always suspected? That I was meant for more excitement than he could provide? The fantasy I had been building all night shattered like glass the moment I realized what I had gotten myself into. What had started as a career move, a networking opportunity, had morphed into something darker, more dangerous. And as I sat there, trying to make sense of the events that were spiraling out of control, I couldn't shake the sense that I had lost something crucial, something I could never get back. After the conversation shifted, I should have left. I should have gotten up and walked away, returned to the safe, predictable life I had with Nate, no matter how frustrating it was. But I stayed. Maybe it was the alcohol, maybe it was the excitement of being in this world with people who could truly change my life. Maybe it was the thrill of being desired by someone successful when Nate, with all his brokenness, had never made me feel this powerful. But I didn't stop Jay when his hand slid higher on my thigh. I didn't stop Marcus when he moved closer. I told myself it was part of the deal, part of the collaboration. The next moments blurred together, too many things happening at once. Jay's lips on my neck, his hands roaming, Marcus joining in with his usual cold demeanor, like they were both doing me a favor. The entire thing felt so surreal, like I was watching it from outside my body. This wasn't me. This wasn't how I had imagined the night would go. But at that moment, it was too late to turn back. I had crossed a line I could never uncross. The pain started suddenly, sharp and wrong. It was like everything had shifted in an instant. I gasped, my body tensing as the reality of the situation hit me. I should have stopped them, should have screamed, should have done something. But instead, I just froze. The pain was unbearable, and I felt tears welling in my eyes. What the hell is happening? I whispered, my voice trembling. Jay's calm, businesslike demeanor didn't falter. He barely even looked at me as he told Marcus, "Go ahead and get it over with." I fumbled for my clothes, feeling a strange mix of guilt and confusion. What had I just done? What had they just done to me? I remember the argument between Jay and Marcus as I tried to pull myself together. They were fighting about whose fault it was that I was in pain, but it felt so detached, like they didn't even care. I was nothing more than a vessel, a means to an end. Jay handed me my phone, his eyes flat and unfeeling. "Call your friends," he said, his voice devoid of any emotion. "We need you out of here." I dialed Amber's number with shaking hands, trying to keep my voice steady as I explained where I was without saying what had really happened. I could barely focus on what I was saying. The pain was getting worse, a tearing sensation that made it difficult to walk. I told Amber I was fine, that everything was okay, but I knew it wasn't. I knew I wasn't okay. While waiting for her, Jay handed me a non-disclosure agreement on his phone. "Sign it," he said, barely looking at me. "Medical bills are covered, but this stays quiet. Remember, you agreed to everything." I signed it without thinking, my finger trembling as I scrawled my name on the screen. It felt like a betrayal of everything I had ever stood for, but what choice did I have? When Amber and Kenzie arrived, their excitement quickly turned to horror as they saw me. Amber's face immediately shifted from concern to a kind of raw panic, while Kenzie's expression was unreadable. She could tell something had gone horribly wrong. The full weight of what I had done, the choices I had made, finally sank in. It wasn't just the physical consequences, the pain I was enduring now. It was what this meant for me and Nate. How would I ever face him again? What would I tell him? How could I explain that I had destroyed everything between us for a night that left me injured and humiliated, with nothing to show for it? Amber helped me into the car, and I couldn't stop shaking. As we drove to her place, I felt like my life was collapsing. I had spent years building something with Nate, trying to make it work, but now it was all falling apart because I had made one impulsive decision, one momentary lapse in judgment. The guilt weighed heavily on me, but I didn't know how to undo what had been done. The next day felt like a haze. My body was sore, the physical pain still present but overshadowed by the deeper ache in my chest. I kept replaying the night in my head, trying to make sense of it, but there was no making sense of it. What had started as a professional opportunity, a way to build my career, had spiraled into something ugly, something I could never take back. The worst part was that I didn't know who to blame. Was it Jay and Marcus for using me, or was it me for allowing myself to be used? And then there was Nate. I hadn't heard from him. The silence was deafening. No calls, no texts, no passive-aggressive sighs. Nothing. He was gone. The phone buzzed in my pocket, but it wasn't from Nate, it was from Casey. Of course, it was her. She was the one who had told him everything. I clicked on the message, heart sinking. "Heard what happened. Men can be such trash. Let me know if you need anything. Casey." The friend who had been there through the good times, but now, it seemed, she was just rubbing salt in the wound. She had helped him erase me from his life. And now she was reaching out with fake sympathy, acting like she cared. I threw my phone across the room. The satisfying crack as it hit the wall was the only thing that gave me a moment of relief. She probably thought she'd won. That she could have Nate now that I was out of the picture. As if he was some prize to be won. As if he wasn't the one who had constantly held me back, never understanding what I was trying to do with my life. Amber and Kenzie tried their best to comfort me, but it felt hollow. How could they understand? They weren't the ones who had spent years propping up someone else's fragile ego while sacrificing my own dreams. They didn't know how suffocating it felt to be in a relationship with someone who never wanted to leave their comfort zone. 2 days passed in a blur of pain and disbelief. I checked my phone compulsively, hoping for something, anything, from Nate. But there was nothing. No apologies, no acknowledgement. Just silence. I had expected anger. I had expected him to shout, to demand an explanation. Something I could work with. But this cold, utter absence, was something I couldn't comprehend. I tried calling him, texting him, even emailed him, but nothing worked. He had erased me completely. I went to his workplace, only to learn he had taken personal leave. It was like he had made a decision to cut me off entirely, to pretend like I had never existed in his life. And then, 2 weeks later, I received the envelope. It was from Nate's lawyer. Not even a real lawyer, just his friend who had passed the bar last year. Inside the envelope was a formal letter detailing the division of our shared possessions and bank accounts. It was cold, efficient, like we were dissolving a business partnership, not a 2-year relationship. He had already removed his name from our lease and utilities. The final paragraph was the most cutting of all. Mr. Henderson wishes to clearly communicate that the relationship is permanently terminated and requests no further contact. Any attempts to contact him will be documented for potential legal action if necessary. Legal action. As if I was some stalker he needed protection from. As if I would beg for someone who clearly thought so little of me that he could discard me without even a conversation. I sat there, staring at the letter. My heart ached, but a strange clarity settled in. I was better off without him. A man who could walk away like this, who could treat me like I was disposable, wasn't someone I needed in my life. I had spent so much of our relationship trying to keep things together, trying to make him see my worth, trying to make him understand my ambitions. But now I realized that I didn't need him to validate me. I didn't need him to be successful, to make me feel important. I deserved more. I deserved someone who understood my drive, someone who would push me to be better, not someone who would drag me down with their insecurities. Someone who wouldn't make me feel guilty for wanting to climb higher, for wanting to break out of the box we were both stuck in. Nate couldn't handle that. He couldn't handle me. And that was on him, not me. I stood up from the table, the letter still in my hands, and walked over to the window. I could see the city skyline in the distance, a reminder of everything I wanted and everything I had been working toward. I had a chance now. A real chance. The phone buzzed again. This time, it was Amber. Willow, you need to talk to him. He's not going to be this angry forever. You two just need some time. I felt a sharp pang of guilt, but it quickly faded. I didn't need to talk to him. I had already given him too many chances, already tried too many times to make him see what I was trying to do. If he couldn't understand that, then he was never going to be the person I needed him to be. I was done. I created a sanitized version of the story for everyone who asked, crafting my narrative around Nate's emotional neglect and the momentary lapse in judgment that led to everything that happened. The sympathy from my co-workers and friends made me feel validated, like they understood why I had made the choices I did. But deep down, I knew the truth, I had sacrificed too much. And for what? One night that ended in the ER, with nothing to show for it but a non-disclosure agreement, prescriptions, and the bitter taste of regret. Nate wasn't coming back. And in the end, I knew I was better off without him. I didn't need to beg for forgiveness. I didn't need to explain myself. I had outgrown him. And he had outgrown me. I deserved someone who understood the industry I was trying to break into, someone who would support me without question, without guilt. Nate couldn't handle who I really was, who I needed to be to succeed. And that was his problem, not mine.